Today we are talking about Blackthorn Hammer. Blackthorn Hammer received a few changes over the past month really, it started in August, and I wanted to look at it again now that it's picked up a lot in popularity with the recent changes and really talk about how this item is now compared to other items, if it's really worth as much as people say it is and if it's really warranted to pick it up as early as some people do. In order to do that, let's quickly go through the changes first and then compare the item to others. The initial change was in August where the health of the item was decreased, making it the highest health damaging item in the game with 450 base health. After that, it already got picked up a little bit. It got picked up on Guan Yu, it got picked up when King Arthur came out, and for certain characters it just had a fair bit of value. But maybe it was still a little bit underrated, because it received another buff in patch 6.1 with the start of season 6, increasing the physical power of Blackthorn Hammer from 25 to 35, and also changing the passive so that now you would get the cooldown reduction, the 10% cooldown reduction at 25% of your mana and not at 50%, meaning the MP5 would kick in much later and you would benefit from the cooldown reduction for most fights. So it made the MP5 more of an emergency backup, and I think it is more useful that way for most characters. After that, Impish Coconut already made some calculations regarding the stat efficiency, and it's kind of hard to measure because Blackthorn Hammer technically doesn't really have a passive, it just has interchangeable stats that it gets, either it has CDR or it has MP5, but he was measuring it against other items and putting some value on their passive, and it turned out to be one of the most price efficient items that we have, with a price tag of 2000 gold. The goal of all these changes, according to Hi-Rez, was to give warriors more hybrid bruiser options that make it more useful to pick up these kind of hammer items, and there were various other hammer changes as well, and it definitely worked in terms of Blackthorn Hammer for sure. We see that a lot more, and we actually also see the other hammers more. But is it really justified? In order to find out, we have to look at other items that give us either defensive or hybrid stats to have a bit of a comparison. In order to give you a clear answer on this one, I did relatively expansive research because I wanted to see if Blackthorn Hammer is a good item relatively early into the game, if it's a good item going into later stages, and so on. So what I did is, first I took a level 10 warrior, or the average stats of a level 10 warrior rather. I took the average stats of a level 10 assassin, then a level 20 warrior, a level 20 assassin, and a level 20 warrior with a tank bruiser build. I also didn't want to ignore the option to rush Blackthorn Hammer, so I also added a level 3 warrior with Blackthorn Hammer. I'm not sure if that's the accurate level for it, but it'll give us a decent idea either way. For the tank or bruiser warrior build, the items that I included were Pestilence, which has 200 health and 80 magical protection, Breastplate of Valor, which has 65 physical protection, Runeforged Hammer, which has 200 health, and an unstacked Heart of the Urchin with 250 health and 30 protections each. In a previous comparison with an older version of Blackthorn I only looked at level 20, and I think it's important to have these more complete pictures when it comes to items like this because their value can kind of change throughout the game. Of course, there were a few items that I put against it. The first one is Spirit Robe. Spirit Robe doesn't come with any health, but it has 40 protections each, so it's very good to see how the flat health value compares to flat protection values. Spirit Robe also comes with its passive that I didn't factor in here, that for brief periods where you CC it would obviously decrease the damage that you take significantly and would therefore have an effect on the effective health as well. But it's also a purely defensive item, whereas Blackthorn is a more offensive item. Magi's Cloak is another item that I threw in the ring here. It's always an interesting one because it has that mix of stats, it has 300 health and it has 15 protections each. So this will be our basically middle ground, especially for the assassins. This one will be more interesting as it is an item that they can utilize quite frequently. Then I also included Runeforged Hammer, just because Runeforged Hammer can demonstrate quite nicely how a little bit less health performs in comparison with its 200 health. I also included Runic Shield as one of the defensive bruiser options here with 150 health and 50 magical protection. It's actually one of those that is relatively close to the pricing of Blackthorn Hammer as well, with 2000 to 150 gold. On the other hand, I also wanted to include the physical equivalent here, being Void Shield, with 150 health and 50 physical protection, which comes at a higher price tag of 2600 gold due to the little bit stronger passive, and also the fact that physical protection is often valued a little bit higher. Let's first look at the stats if this was to be your only defense item in the build. For a level 10 warrior, it definitely doesn't look bad. Blackthorn Hammer comes in at 2646 effective physical health here. That is more towards the higher areas of defensive items here. We look at Spirit Robe, we have 2500 roughly. We have Magi's Cloak, which is very close to Blackthorn Hammer with this mix of stats with 2673. And then we have Runeforged with less health and therefore 2279 effective health. So you can really see how this health investment can pay off for survivability. We also have Runic Shield, which only has a little bit of health and is more towards the magical department, and that only has 2205 health. If we go for a pure physical defense-oriented item like Void Shield on the other hand, that ends up with 2955 effective health, which is significantly more. You have to, however, keep in mind that Void Shield is also more expensive. Actually made a last-second decision to also include Nemean Lion here, as that is a little bit cheaper and is also a physical defense-focused item without health. This doesn't really need to be done for the magical side because most magical items are basically like Runic Shield with health and magical defense. Nemean Lion comes in at 2930 effective health, so pretty close to a Void Shield in this regard. So we can see Blackthorn is good, but it's not the best when it comes to countering physical damage. However, it does have quite a bit on an upper hand on items like Spirit Robe, which I thought was rather interesting. If we look at the stats for the level 10 Assassin, we can see a very similar picture. It's got roughly 200 less effective health than the physical defense items themselves, but significantly more than any other item really, 200 more or even more than that. For the level 20 warrior, things look a little bit different. Here we can see that Blackthorn Hammer actually has a little bit less effective health than Spirit Robe. The difference here is only 100 with 4750-ish. But hey, Spirit Robe is a little bit better. Magi's Cloak, also with this mix of stats, is pretty much at the same place as Spirit Robe, also a little bit better. Runeforged Hammer, again, falls behind, no surprise, we don't need to talk about that every time. Runic Shield, also, of course, weaker. Void Shield, on the other hand, has 700 more effective health than Blackthorn Hammer, and Hide of Nemean Lion has 800 more. So due to the higher increase of health over the time of your levels in comparison to the increase of defense, health just has a little bit less value when it comes to late game. We can see a somewhat similar picture with the Assassins. Here the numbers are even closer though because they have a little bit less health. Basically, you have almost the same health between 4200 to 4300 between Blackthorn, Spirit Robe, Magi's Cloak, and then the only things that stand out again are Void Shield and Nemean Lion with up to 4800 effective health. If we have a full tank build, however, this shifts the numbers once again. We again see that Blackthorn Hammer, Spirit Robe, and Magi's Cloak basically give you almost the exact same effective health with around 9000 to 9150. And then Void Shield and Nemean Lion again reach 700 to 800 effective health more. For a level 3 warrior, on the other hand, the health plays a very big role. Blackthorn Hammer is almost the strongest item at this point. Just looking at the effective health here, the only item that can compete is Void Shield, which you're definitely not going to rush because it's way too expensive for that. Compared to the base effective health, you have 1.6 times as much effective health at that level, so it can really be worth considering rushing Blackthorn over going into Warrior's Blessing if you don't utilize the passive as much and if you have other means to do that. So Blackthorn Rush is maybe really an option. Then if we look at the magical side, we're not going to go through all the numbers here, but the picture is very similar. Blackthorn starts out very strong for a level 10 warrior, it's a little bit better than those items with a little bit of defense, but on the other hand, Runic Shield comes in with 300 more effective health. On the other hand, Nemean Lion drops off completely with 1876 effective health. And level 20 for the Assassin, it still remains a little bit stronger than Spirit Robe in the magical department, as the base magical protection is a little bit lower, so that seems to factor in here more. And we can kind of see, again, Runic Shield standing out a lot, as it should, unsurprisingly. For level 20, we see that Blackthorn Hammer drops off significantly more. We have roughly 200 effective health difference to Spirit Robe and Magi's Cloak in this case. It simply is a bit weaker at this point. That is because you have less base magical protection at level 20, so adding a little bit more adds more value here. The same is true for the level 20 assassin as well. In the level 20 tank build, however, everything is more evened out again because you already have a more balanced mix of stats through the items already. So it doesn't really matter too much which one you invest into, as both kind of benefit you around the same degree, unless of course you go in Runic Shield. For level 3 warrior, we can also see that the magical effective health is once again 1.6 times as many, so this early survivability can be very nice. I think overall, looking at these stats, Blackthorn Hammer is great, but it's sometimes a little bit overrated. It gives you a very good mix of stats in terms of survivability, and it gives you a lot of damage on top of that through the power, which is something that cannot be said about many of the defensive options here. However, especially Runic Shield and Void Shield shouldn't be underestimated. They still come with health, and depending on who your lane opponent and the jungler is as a solo, for example, they can still be very good. If you're a jungler, a warrior, for example, in the jungle, or you want to play tanky early on, then I think Blackthorn Hammer is a great choice for you because you have that option to have both kinds of survivability to a certain degree very early. But for a solo laner, I think there are many situations where one particular defense item would help you a little bit better. That is, unless you're planning to go into a mixed defense item right away after that, or a specific targeted defense item. That can be very useful too. Comparable items like Runic Shield or Void Shield also give you a decent amount of damage. Especially Void Shield will give you more than Blackthorn Hammer overall. However, Void Shield also is significantly more expensive, and that is its main problem basically. Given the current stat efficiency, I actually wouldn't be all too surprised if Blackthorn Hammer will receive a price increase in the near future, as right now it's just a little bit too valuable and a little bit too frequently picked up, I think, for high-risk taste. Thank you guys very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, feel free to click the sub button and ring the bell. It really helps me out. And other than that, see you for the next one tomorrow. Duke Sloth, out.